All right, Charm City Birdwatch episode 149. Getting real close to that 150 mark. Coming up on 3 years as well. 3 years, I don't know. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but I want to say May. Sometime soon here in May, should be hitting that 3-year anniversary of the podcast. Nobody really cares. So I don't know why I'm talking about it, but kind of cool to think about doing this every single week for 3 years. That's a little mind-boggling, to be honest with you, but here we are. Not a ton of pressing stuff here. As funny as that is, I just get done talking about how we're close to hitting 150, 3 straight years, episode every week, 100, coming up on that 150 mark. And here I am thinking about, do I really need to put out an episode this week? Because I don't know. There's just not much that was going on. At least with the Orioles, that is. What do you want me to talk about? They're not hitting. The pitching still spotty, but they're still not hitting. They're losing more than they're winning. What do you want me to say? And I was close to that, and I was thinking I didn't have enough, but this Ravens stuff, the more I think about it, I really kind of have a lot to get to here. And it's mostly dealing with this Justin Houston visit that took place this week. I want to say Tuesday. Earlier this week, he came to the castle for a visit. Prospective free agent addition for a Ravens pass rush unit that is in desperate need of an addition. We know what they did this offseason. I think, in my opinion, it's been an okay offseason. I know people would probably consider it a borderline awful pass rush offseason, but just because the situation they're in is pretty much awful doesn't mean that contextually they haven't had a good offseason in the grand scheme of things. We knew they weren't going to keep Judon. We knew they weren't going to keep Ngakoue. Those were just two guys that priced themselves out of Baltimore. I thought Tyus Bowser would do the same. He would also be gone, but the Ravens end up being able to retain him on a surprisingly cheap deal. That's a positive right there. Get Pernell McPhee back. That counts for something. So again, in the context of how everything's shaken out so far, I don't hate it. I think they've made the right move so far. They haven't done anything in regards to the pass rush that makes you say, what are you doing? Unless the lack of doing something is what tells you, what makes you say, what are you doing? And that's kind of where we're getting at this week, because Justin Houston comes in for a visit. We're just a little under 2 weeks away from the draft. We've reached kind of this free agency plateau across the entire league. And, you're starting to wonder, if you're a Ravens fan, what's the plan here? What are they doing? Are they seriously looking to add people? Not just at pass rush, but, I guess they're a wide receiver in there, even though I think we've seen the market completely pass the Ravens by in that regard. Like, there's nobody left. Who do you want them to get on the free agent market at this point? There's nobody left. I think the market's passed them by as far as receivers concerned. But pass rush, there's still guys out there, which is what makes this kind of the hot topic right now. And again, it starts with Justin Houston, comes for a visit, leaves without a deal. I'm not reading into that. I'm not, plenty of guys have come through here, left without a deal, come back and signed. Sammy Watkins just did it a couple of weeks ago when he came to visit. It happens, It just be, because we've heard these stories in the past of a free agent has come here and they were just blown off their feet, that they had to sign on the spot. That's cool. That's great. That's just, let's not expect that to be the norm, because it's not. But there are a couple things here at play. One, first and foremost, does Justin Houston think this is a good fit for him? He came, he had the visit. We can only speculate. We can only assume he's going to go have some other visits. We'll see where he ends up landing. There's obviously a lot of factors at play here. The fit, style of play in terms of a fit, that's number one. Money is also up there. That could be the number one. So that's first and foremost. But beyond that, I'm looking at this Ravens ongoing borderline insane obsession with compensatory picks. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, we've been over comp picks before. Most people know what we're talking about, but you lose big name players, you lose big productive players, you get comp picks in return. Matt Judon, Ngakoue, those are types of guys that can earn you a comp pick. You know, we know the Ravens also have some other ones because David Culley got hired as the head coach of the Texans. So they've got this stockpile of comp picks. And of their moves that they've made so far this offseason, none of them have really tipped the scales in the other way because, you know, you can offset those comp picks by adding players. If you go out and sign big name, big productivity free agents, they offset comp picks. So the Ravens so far this offseason haven't made any moves like that. Kevin Zeitler, because he was cut by the Giants, did not, have any factor on the comp pick formula. He was not your typical unrestricted free agent. And Sammy Watkins, again, 1 year, $5 million, that's not really factoring in at all. So the Ravens, they've got their stockpile. And if they were to add someone like Justin Houston at this point, that would play a factor in the comp pick formula. They would lose a pick. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If they wait a couple weeks, there's a May 3rd deadline, and once that deadline is reached, free agency acquisitions do not have any bearing on the comp pick formula. So there's this narrative going around, this big storyline from everyone, from the idiots on Twitter, brain-dead fans, to reputable beat writers like Jeff Zrebiec. Everyone's talking about this. Maybe they have interest in Houston. They really want him, but they don't want to give up these comp picks, so they're going to try to wait. And if that's true, it doesn't surprise me because, again, we know how the Ravens have operated the past couple years and really for the longest time here with this comp pick stuff. It wouldn't surprise me, but if this ends up being the case, I would definitely be disappointed. And, I like to think of myself as a realist when it comes to these moves. I also think I lean more towards favoring the Ravens' moves, not like I have a soft spot or anything, or I try to not let the fan in me take over, but we know that the Ravens have been a well-run organization. That's just a fact. They've always been a well-run organization under Ozzie. They did it the right way. Now with this handoff to DaCosta, they've been killing it in the offseason. They've been doing very well with trades, whether it's in the middle of the season or off-season. DaCosta has been on a hot streak. He's had a few misses, but for the most part, he's been one of the hottest GMs in all of football since he took over. And we get into this, not really a trap, but we get into this point where we keep saying, the Ravens front office is so great. They can do no wrong. They, trust the process. And yes, that's true to some extent, but at what point does all of this, this praise, this in DaCosta we trust, this, praising of being frugal and the smart front office labels, when do we throw that out the window and say it doesn't matter, it doesn't mean anything? Because the Ravens are in a win now mode. The Ravens are trying to win a Super Bowl right now. You got an MVP quarterback still on his rookie deal. Look, we've talked about this time and time again. We know the scenario. You have some clear holes on this team that need to be fixed, that need to be filled if you want to legitimately capture that Super Bowl trophy. If you want to legitimately capture even a chance to go and play in the AFC Championship. Because let's be real, they haven't hit that. They've disappointed in the playoffs. There are some clear things that need to happen. Receiver was one of them. Didn't get addressed this offseason. We'll see what happens in the draft. Didn't get addressed in free agency, I'll say. Pass rush. You lost 2 guys. I think they were reasonable guys to lose, but they're still losses. You got to fill the holes. Tyus Bowser, not a bad deal. It is what it is, but there's still holes to fill. They haven't done anything in free agency yet. There's clear weaknesses on this team. They need to be addressed, and we've just been sitting in silence here. And I'm not one of these people that's always screaming, go out and sign the big name free agent, go out and spend all this money, waste all your money on the big name guy day one. That's not me. But at the same time, let's get rid of this nonsense of, they're being smart, they're saving their money. Saving their money for what? They got to pay Lamar, they got to pay all these people. Yeah, sure, I get that. I'm not talking about going out and giving Justin Houston a 4 or 5 year deal or any other free agent. I don't understand the hesitancy here. I don't understand it at all. Like let's wait and see. Maybe we can get somebody after May 3rd and it doesn't factor into our comp pick formula. Why are you even rolling the dice? Go out, drop the money, and if you overpay for a guy like Justin Houston, you overpay for, I'm going to mention some other names here, other potential targets. If you overpay for one of these guys, who cares? You saw 1 year, 2 year deal. You overpay, it doesn't matter. This idea that you're going to cripple yourself and put yourself in cap hell or, just ruin your chances of signing or retaining your young talent. That's not true. And would it really be the end of the world if you overpaid Justin Houston? He came here, let's say he gets injured, heaven forbid, whoever it is, they sign someone, overpay, they come here, they get injured, or they play the full season and they don't produce. Would that really be such a bad thing? It would be disappointing, it would suck, but they took the shot, at least they tried. Because if you're not going to do that, what are you doing? You're just going to sit back and, I guess we like the guys we have. I guess we'll take a shot with who we have. No, take a chance. You want to win a Super Bowl, make some moves. And if you swing and you miss and you strike out, that sucks. It is what it is, but at least you tried. I'm at this point, man, where what are we doing here? What are we doing? And if all this nonsense is true about them waiting until May 3rd so they don't lose a comp pick, hey, you know better than I do. You're the GM, I'm not. There's a reason behind that. I say that all the time. But at the same time, what is this conservative approach getting you? And let's say you wait. Maybe Justin Houston signs after May 3rd. Maybe someone else signs after May 3rd. Cool. Wow. Great. It was still a gamble. It was still a risk. It was an unnecessary gamble, an unnecessary risk that I don't want to see a team, my team that I root for, I don't want to see that team taking that kind of gamble for a really, in the grand scheme of things, a low reward when you're in a Super Bowl window. Now, Justin Houston, he's not the only name. The list of viable free agent pass rush options, it's not super long, but there are intriguing names that are still on the market as we're a couple weeks away from the draft. And I've highlighted a couple. Some will not be a surprise at all. But I think there's one, maybe none of them are really a surprise, but let's go through them. And it starts with, I'll start with Ryan Kerrigan, because this is the guy that I think we're probably most familiar with. And I'm not really talking about proximity with him being down the road in D.C., but if you remember 2 years ago in the 2019 season, approaching the trade deadline, the Ravens were in desperate need of a pass rusher. Kerrigan's name was floated around there. The fan base really wanted him. He was coming off of 3 straight seasons where he hit double-digit sacks, playing a full 16 games. He had really, from 2011 all the way to 2018, he played a full 16 games, started all 16 every year. I mean, he's been one of the most consistent pass rushers in this league for Washington. In 2019, took a step back, only started 12 games, but had 5.5 sacks. And then this past year in 2020, he only started 1 game. His snap count went way down. He had 5.5 sacks again. So not the double-digit guy he was just a couple years ago when the Ravens were saying, hey, this could be a guy, or the fan base, I should say, was saying, hey, this is a guy that could be brought in as a big boost in the middle of a season. It didn't happen. They made their splash elsewhere. We know what DaCosta did. He got the big trade with Marcus Peters. But now, just 2 years later, Kerrigan, is he still a good fit for the Ravens? Like I said, that snap count has dropped big time. And I know Washington had a great front seven last year. You know, if there's one good thing you could say about that team, they got after the quarterback. So I can understand the drop in snaps to some extent. You know, Kerrigan being used as more of a rotational piece at the age of 32. It's not super surprising. But again, you know, we're talking about a good stretch here where he went from starting his career playing 95% of the snaps down into the 80s, the 70s, 57% in 2019, 38% last year. Interesting. I don't know. How much is that? How much of that is depth that Washington has? How much of that is age, trying to keep him fresh? So I think Kerrigan, the biggest thing there is you're wondering how much of a detriment do you think that drop in snap counts is. Now, I will say, despite that drop and despite only starting one game, he still recorded 5.5 sacks. So the production still there. Now, if he comes to the Ravens, he would certainly have more opportunities for more snaps. We know Wink likes to rotate guys in and out if he has the personnel to do so. But I think it's safe to say if Kerrigan was here, the way the depth chart is shaping out right now, he would be getting a lot closer to those starter snaps that we've been accustomed to. And then at that point, the question is he getting back closer to the double-digit total? Maybe not hitting double digits, but 8, 9, maybe. But the one thing you can say about Kerrigan, again, from 2011 to 2018, didn't miss a game. He's been available. And if you're talking about these pass rushers age 30 and up, that availability factor is a big thing. And I'm going to get into that with another one of these names here in a second. Another guy to keep an eye on, Melvin Ingram. Another big name, been in the league since 2012. 2020 was rough for Melvin Ingram. Injuries, only played 7 games, no sacks, 10 tackles, 2 pass deflections. That's his stat sheet there for last year. So, and an interception. Let's not ignore that. But prior to that, pretty consistent. From 2015 to 2019, a consistent pass rusher, made 3 straight Pro Bowls from 17 to 19. This guy's a legit force, and he does a lot more than just get after the quarterback when we're talking about guys that play on the edge here. He's not just a bull rush, go after the quarterback type of guy. We've seen that in his career. He's played outside linebacker, defensive end. But to me, this is a name that might be a little too pricey for the Ravens. I don't know. It could go both ways. Because you're thinking typically Melvin Ingram, that's a guy that's going to get a pretty significant payday. Not a top-tier payday, but something that maybe might be on the cusp of the Ravens saying, no, that's too much for us. But at the same time, he's still available. It's mid-April. He's still available. And I don't think, that's not a COVID cap thing either. I don't know if I would be as interested in him as I am in Houston or Ryan Kerrigan, but with his track record and the name recognition and all of that, it's worth mentioning. And there's one more guy here that I wanted to mention, and that's Olivier Vernon. Spent the last couple years in Cleveland. Ravens fans should be familiar there. At the age of 30, he recorded 9 sacks, which was second most he's ever recorded in a season. In 14 games played, 13 starts, 9 sacks. All right, I go down to the snap counts here. He played the most snaps had in a season since 2016. It's going the normal trajectory. Starts high, 80s, 90s, dips down to the 60s, 48% in 2019, and then 75% of defensive snaps. He was out there last year with Cleveland. I found that interesting. I found that very interesting. of all these names that we've mentioned here, Justin Houston, Melvin Ingram, Ryan Kerrigan, Olivier Vernon is the youngest at the age of 30. Now, I don't know what kind of attention he's getting on the market, but I feel like of the other names, Houston, Ingram, Kerrigan, Olivier Vernon might be kind of hiding behind them in terms of name recognition, media coverage, whatever it is. But he's an interesting one for me. And now, again, that availability factor with what I was talking about with Kerrigan, Vernon hasn't played a full 16 games since 2016. Something's kept him out here and there. And again, while he is the youngest of this group that we're talking about here, age 30 and up, availability, it's a big question. So those are really the big options that I see. And to be honest with you, I think Justin Houston intrigues me the most, or would be a guy that I would like them to target the most. He's had consistent usage over the past 3 years. There's been no real, from 2018 to 2020, it's been in that 60 to 65% range. I know that's not, particularly high, but it was consistent over a 3-year span. And in that 3-year span, you look at his output, 9 sacks, 11 sacks, 8 sacks. And these last 2 seasons, played a full 16 games. So is he going to be the guy he was early in his career, or the guy he was in 2014 where he somehow racked up 22 sacks? No, he's not. But I'm seeing a consistency over the last 3 years that I'm not really seeing with some of these other guys. Ingram, Kerrigan, Vernon, there's either injury concerns, there's either, or a significant drop in snap count, or a significant drop in production output. This is the guy at the top of the list. And he's the guy that's been in for a visit. So again, I go back to what I'm saying. You look at who's out there, and the pass rush market still has more names out there than other position groups. This isn't like wide receiver where I was saying that the market is completely passed the Ravens by. If what they're saying is true, that you're more concerned about maintaining a comp pick, I don't know what you're doing here. Let's get one of these guys in here. If not, let's get 2 of them in here. I'd love to see Houston and Kerrigan in here. Houston and Vernon. Somebody, let's take some swings. Let's get some bodies in here. Let's get some depth. Because unless you go into this draft and take someone in round 1, can you really expect to get starter production or close to starter production from a draft pick? I mean, you take a pass rusher 2nd round or later, maybe you get a steal, maybe a guy falls in the draft. I don't, look, I say this all the time. There's so many people out there that know better than I do, but you take especially 3rd round or later, you taking a pass rusher, that's a project. That's a guy that you're hoping to work on his rookie season, and then, maybe by his 2nd, 3rd season, he's seen significant snaps for you, and he's a productive role player. If you want a bona fide pass rushing starter, you got to take it in the 1st round. I mean, so unless the Ravens have their eye on somebody or a couple guys that they really think they can get in terms of pass rush in the 1st round, I don't understand this hesitancy in terms of free agency. And to be quite honest, even if they do have a handful of guys that they really like in terms of pass rush in this draft, I still don't understand the hesitancy. At least get one of these names, so you're not relying on a rookie to come in and produce. That's not a good spot to be in. Look where they were with Patrick Queen last year. I still like Patrick Queen a lot, but what I'm getting at here is that you drafted him, and with the depth, or the lack of depth, I should say, that you had at middle linebacker, you needed him to come in and start day 1. And to be fair, he held his own. He stayed out there. He made his mistakes, but that's just not a situation you want to put yourself in. So let's say they draft someone at pass rush in the 1st round. Still, bring in a Justin Houston on a 1 or 2 year deal. Ryan Kerrigan, someone like this. So this new rookie can learn from these vets, like a Houston, a Calais Campbell, They can learn how to play the game. They can learn how to do it the right way without having that pressure of having to produce from your very first NFL start. All right, that's my Ravens rant. I guess I have a couple things you could say here on the Orioles. Particularly that game last night, Friday night, finally get back in the win column with a nice 5-2 win against the Rangers. They hit the road again. I don't know. Maybe the Orioles are road warriors. They've been much better on the road. They're 5-2 on the road this year. Only one win at home for an overall record of 6-8. Starting pitching was solid. Bullpen even better. Offense finally put up some runs. A fun game to watch, and it flew by, like 2.5 hours. That was a great baseball game to watch last night. And one of my biggest things that I'm looking at here was Jorge Lopez, who made his third start of the year, earned his first win, and this was a very much-needed performance for Lopez because these first two starts of the year, again, we know the situation the Orioles are in. They're willing to be more lenient with these starting pitchers. They're going to have their opportunities. The leash is going to be longer, so to speak, than they would be with another team. And you also factor in that Lopez is out of options, not as easy to send him down. This is a guy that they're going to give chances to. But at the same time, after the two rough starts he had, you're hoping to see some sort of advancement, some sort of improvement from him, and boy, did he deliver on that. Again, only lasted 5 innings, but through those first 4, he was lights out. He had a no-hitter through 4 innings. And I think he had a perfect game through the first 3, surrendered a walk, and then still maintained the no-hitter through 4, and he was striking out guys left and right. He was just the pitch placement. They made the Rangers look like a double-A lineup. 8 strikeouts in 5 innings. Has a little bit of a rough 5th inning. That second time through the lineup. Gives up a pair of home runs. That's what you want to see. Some sort of improvement. Something for him to grasp onto and say, this is what we're aiming for here. And is it a little concerning that you got into that 5th inning, gave up to the 2 home runs, and things started to look like they were going to fall apart? Yeah, it's not great. It's not ideal. But I think there's a lot to grasp onto there from those first 4 innings especially. Look, if he's a guy that's only going to get you 5 innings, I think you take that. If Jorge Lopez is going to go out there and give you 5 innings and surrender 3 earned runs or less, working efficiently, striking guys out, and working through 5. You'd like your guys to go deeper consistently. You'd like 6-7 innings more regularly. But I think for a guy like Jorge Lopez, 5 innings, back end of the rotation type of guy, that's good. So I think there's something to build on there, and not saying he saved his job because, again, I think the leash is a lot longer here in Baltimore, but still you do have to give him credit for that. And offensively, it's the same story. Cedric Mullins still leading the way. He's batting .396. He had 2 more hits last night with an RBI. He's still killing it in that leadoff role, and after that, it's spotty, to say the least. DJ Stort's come back up, and he's given a little bit of offense here and there. He's getting some opportunities in the top of the lineup, too. Michael Franco's had some big games recently. But for the most part, again, Mountcastle in the DH role explicitly goes 0 for 4. Trey Mancini batting cleanup goes 0 for 4. 4 strikeouts. Yeesh. Batting .151. I know Brandon Hyde had to sit him, or was going to sit him, earlier this week. Watch this one from the bench. It's not a punishment. I'm doing this for your benefit because you're striking out left and right. You're grounding into double plays. You're about to break a bat over your head. After every single at-bat, you go down in the tunnel and you smash something probably. He's a competitor. We love Trey Mancini. We love him. We love the fire that in the high standard that he holds himself to. And in the long run, that's going to benefit him. And I know we all know he's going to break out of this at some point. But 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, it's not just a one-game thing. And then it just you pile on some bad luck. What was it, the game the other day against the Mariners? A routine grounder from third or short. They throw over to first. It goes right through his glove. Throw on the money. Trey played it right. And the ball just blasts through the webbing in his glove. When does that happen? When have you ever seen that happen? So, you pile that on to all the other stuff that's been happening to him at the plate. And it's just, it's what do you say? What do you do? And it's really hard to watch, especially for a guy like Trey. And the journey he's had to come back. The standard he holds himself to, the competitiveness he has. It's hard to watch. It really is. But I know he's going to break out of it. You think back to 2018 when he suffered that injury. And I remember it very well. He suffered an injury, and then he had trouble coming back from that, and he thought that he was on the verge of getting demoted. He's been through it in his career. To make it to the major league level, to be the offensive contributor that he is, at this point in his career, and now to come back from cancer, and now he's in this offensive rut. He's in this mental rut, it seems. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to break out of it. And it hasn't been all bad. He's had a couple home runs this year. He's had some flashes of that offense. But for the most part, it's been some really rough nights at the plate for him. But I just know he's going to break out of it. There's no reason for me to not believe that. I don't see him losing all of this just in a blink of an eye. It's just a matter of, having the opportunity to settle down, separate himself from this comeback, and just focus on the game. And I know he wants nothing more than the opportunity to do that, and I think it's going to happen. So, but that's the big thing. When Trey Mancini, who you thought was going to be one of your offensive leaders, is batting 151, and nobody else is really picking up the slack. Mountcastle batting 204. Santander batting 196. Severino, who's been a pretty productive offensive player, batting 222 at the bottom of the lineup. I don't know. You take the offense where you can get it. 5 runs last night lifts you to a win. You'll take it. But I don't know. You're questioning, when is this funk going to leave? When are all these guys going to finally break out? And I guess the good news is, if they all got cold at the same time, maybe they'll all get hot at the same time. And in a couple weeks, the Orioles will be winning some of these games, 9-3, 9-4, something like that, 10-5. I don't know. All right, that'll do it for episode 149. Can't wait, episode 150 next week. I've got nothing planned. I'm looking at the calendar here, probably a draft preview. I'm not the most knowledgeable draft guy, but yeah, I suppose next week would be perfect for a draft preview. Spread the word. Spread the word. Tell the family. Tell the friends. Tell your coworkers. Tell random people you pass on the street. Tell them to listen to the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Anywhere that you listen to a podcast, search for Charm City Birdwatch. We'll be on there. I promise you. Get those numbers up. Let's subscribe on multiple platforms. Even if you don't listen on Spotify, subscribe anyway. Let's get those numbers up. I'll talk to you guys next week.